Morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, December 22nd. This is where we do live analysis for day trading and take a look at potential hot spots for today. Not a lot to be talking about today. Equities looking to open slightly in the red. We just did have the U.S. GDP growth rate quarter over quarter. It came in, obviously, GDP is coming down. Last quarter numbers were fairly significant. We're still growing at a much slower rate. We did come in a little bit higher than expectations. So we're down from 6.7% down to 2.3%, but expectations were 2%. That being said, I don't know if that's really going to impact the markets too greatly this morning. What we might be looking at is just a little bit of washout after the run up yesterday. We mentioned the markets are going to be choppy. The markets are choppy, and it's probably going to stay that way probably into early next year as liquidity continues to decline. We're also going to go over today about with oil. We have oil inventory later this morning, so we'll take a look at that. We jump into it. I do need to share this disclaimer that trading involves skin may not be appropriate for everyone. That any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And this is an educational session. Please do not construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We're doing this for your education purposes. And there's the chart of oil. This at the end because there are some interesting. And by the way, before I flip it over to Brian, I am going to ask. Plans are fluid, and Brian and I are deliberating about next week. Who's current of those who are currently on? Who would want to join if Brian did these next week? If you could chat, who would want to be here? It gives us an idea, and we can make a determination on if we're going to do some of these next week, and if we do, at what cadence. So we're deliberating. So any feedback would be helpful. Anyone wants to tell us, just put in the chat, hey, I'd be interested. I'm in next week. But we'll see how that goes. With that, Brad, over to you. Take a quick peek over at equities, and then we'll rattle and take a look at a setup before oil inventory at 30 this morning.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say there's much news. There's not a whole lot of obviously the GDP data you mentioned, it came in a little bit higher than expected. I think the consumer confidence number at 10 o'clock is going to be an important one. It is expected to be higher than it was previously at 111.1 versus 109.5. Where I think there could be kind of a little bit of a hiccup with this one is, again, this is it's not just what happened last week. So, Omicron may or may not roll into this number a little bit. Existing home sales, not worried about that one. But I think really the Omicron factor will show up in consumer confidence. Because remember, consumer confidence it really kind of boils over into retail sales, which kind of leads to kind of everything else out there. So that's about the only news that we have today that I would say is, besides the oil inventory report, that's really kind of, I think everybody's in waiting mode right now for PCE tomorrow. A lot of Omicron news in the overnight. Here's an interesting one from ECB's Mueller. Omicron could send inflation either way. It's like, that's great. We're already really, really high. What do you mean it could go either way? Like, it could get worse? So
not very helpful.
You're at a 39-year high. Yeah, normally when you're like at 39-year highs, you're like, it can only go in one direction. And he's like, no, it could go either way. It could get worse. So that's interesting. The UK had some revisions in GDP as well, but still positive. And again, they're in that new interest rate environment. We're seeing kind of that still continue to rally through. The pound yen is up 144. Euro pound down 37, and then pound dollar. And again, we are seeing kind of the dollar, I'd say more or less flat, a little bit maybe weak more than anything else. But again, depending on which currency you're going against. The yen is just continuing to see weakness, though, across the board. So again, that's helping propel the pound yen higher because even the dollar yen is up 44. So again, currency markets are not crazy. I was going to say, the only thing that we're really hearing out here, again, it's just kind of what could Omicron do? Maybe Omicron could do this. Maybe Omicron could do that. England cuts self-isolation times as shorter, worker shortages increase. It's kind of the same story. They just keep throwing different kind of,
I think a lot of what I'm catching is it's going to spread.
Yeah.
The problem's going to be particularly around globally, but then in the U.S. too, is hospitals
Yeah.
understaffed. You're going to get an
Yeah.
uptick in people, and so it's about
Hmm.
clogging up the healthcare system. It's
Yeah.
still it's definitely for the unvaccinated. The impact is much more dramatic for unvaccinated versus vaccinated. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like it's going to hit us. We're going to have this big wave. And in fact, I think Brian,
Yeah.
I mentioned to you this morning, Israel is already starting to offer a fourth booster to people over 60. And I guess the efficacy is, it wanes after about 4 months. So,
Mm. Yep. Yeah,
um,
and actually, I saw something earlier today that they're saying in further analysis that Delta is not less severe. I'm sorry, Omicron is not less severe than Delta from early things that they're seeing. The difference in the severity thus far has been just the vaccinations. So
yeah,
that's kind of an interesting take on it as well. That, oh no, it's actually not as severe. It's just it was less severe because people had vaccinations.
because right,
Um,
because there's more people vaccinated. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
We
yeah. So
we're waiting for it to come in, and we know it's coming, and we know things going to keep
yeah,
mutating, and we know this is going to be around for a long time. It
yep,
it's
yep.
fatigue. 2 years of this.
But yeah, and in positive news though, they did say that the FDA, and again, I haven't seen an update this morning. I haven't. I'm a little bit behind. My coffee machine was a little bit off this morning, so I do know that they expected the FDA to approve both Pfizer and Merck's drug, their COVID pills. And again, the data for Pfizer was great, 70% reduced hospitalizations. And I know Maryland had a big message yesterday that we're at 1,400, COVID beds right now. At 1,500, they can officially go into pandemic emergency mode or whatever it is, and then at 1,900 we kind of cap out. I mean, if you think about it, if there's 1,900 people in beds and you could have given them a pill that got rid of 70% of them, that alleviates a lot of the concerns. So that could be a big
Yeah,
relief coming in.
it's all
But
these things. Yeah, it would be.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So, but I would say overall
all right,
market
so yeah, let's
wise,
jump into charts.
yeah, I would say right now, I mean, again, the dollar index is really starting to retrace back. And again, we talked about it breaking through, how we would see dollar weakness and continued dollar weakness, probably down into this 96 range. We're seeing that now. I mean, it literally rolled at 2 o'clock this morning. Yesterday at about noon, it rolled and then kind of came back up for the European session, and the Europeans drove it down again. And with that base there, I would say that we're probably in for a day of continued dollar weakness. And again, that's going to be a lot of Omicron based news. As it doubles, triples, depending on where your state is. Now the indices, the VIX is also up. Now it's up just a little bit, up 0.33. And again, green VIX mean red markets. It's down from where I mean, really, we started yesterday high and kind of ended low. It is a little bit lower, but I do feel that the more we go with this, with no economic news coming out, the outlets that I don't know, I would say there's not much to talk about except Omicron. So, talking about it again, we were due for a bit of a reversal, and we talked about it yesterday. Seeing the up, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a down day, and then we have the PCE coming in, and that's kind of what it's redoing right now. It's resetting. So VIX is up 0.5%. ES. Yesterday we pointed out we had an area of sellers coming in here right around 46, 44, and we literally this morning actually we got to 46, 44, 45, 50. So yeah, right. Actually, it actually tagged our level. I didn't extend it across, but if I extend it across, you can see it actually did tag a little while ago at 7 o'clock. We talked about this being a peak, and again, we have that kind of Harry Potter trade, and a kind of a small level sitting right here. Again, a base, a push to the very, very end, a push to the very, very end, and we're kind of hitting it right now. That typically means that we really don't have a whole lot left in that area. Could this be set up for a potential short? Yeah, I would say, all it's doing is really retracing some of the moves from yesterday and brings us back down into kind of right there, which, again, psychological level right around, let's see, the bottom of this is sitting right at 45.94. So right around that 4,600 psychological level. So right now, it doesn't look great. And again, talking about hospitals filling up is not necessarily a positive thing for the overall economy. And again, the numbers I give you guys for Maryland, which is interesting because Maryland has not abnormally high, but it has a very high vaccination rate compared to other states. We are kind of ahead on that one, but yet we've already filled our beds. And the scary news is they said we won't see the peak until the end of January. I'm like, wow, we're filling beds now. We got an entire month. What? So that was news. So again, that could be driving some of this as well, because I highly doubt our situation is different than anybody else's. NQ, what's interesting about NQ right now is you're seeing NQ really getting stuck between the 16,000 and the 15,900, kind of that 100-point range. Yesterday, we just drove through a bunch of levels. We had that 1030 reversal, continue to push higher. We continue to rally higher again from that kind of breakthrough. And now we're just kind of bouncing, but I wouldn't say that the bounces are very much higher. Now, typically when we're looking at NQ, we'll pull Apple. You can see that Apple is kind of where it closed yesterday. It's down just, it looks like a little bit, right? A little bit from where it closed yesterday. So again, that's probably why the NQ is a little bit red. With this kind of peak, any bad news for Apple? Apple should go tumbling back down again, which again will drag the NQ, which is for one of the weakest. Tesla,
interestingly enough,
has a big gap.
On this one, I was just going to drop it up there
Mhm.
because I still had this from I'm just looking at my chart from earlier in the week, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's having a difficult time getting through that 50% retracement level from when we dropped late last week,
Mhm.
and so that it's that 16,000 level, the
Mhm.
psychological level that you always like to talk about, that we always mention.
Yeah.
It has hit it, or it's come very close to it 1, 2, 3 times, but it keeps it back. The question is as you know, the fourth time, does it eventually just blow through that and keep going higher? Do we get that Santa
Yeah.
Claus rally coming in that everyone keeps
Mhm.
calling for, or and I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see. I'm not overly confident that we'll see that, but
Yeah.
within liquidity, it certainly is. It's not out of the cards.
No, yeah. I mean, just the volume is so low at this point; it doesn't take much. And again, all we need to hear is that one or two of the reindeer have COVID. I mean, that's all it takes, right? And then there's going to be a
Yeah,
reduced, a
then that
reduced
Santa Claus
capacity, right?
rally goes
Right there goes
out.
the Santa Claus
Hey,
rally.
guess not Rudolph.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot. I mean, it better not be Rudolph. If it's Rudolph, it's done. They'll cancel Christmas. But I mean, if it's like Donner and Blitzen, maybe because they were in close proximity. I mean, that's it could happen, right?
Yeah, they're slackers.
I mean, if they quarantine, and then it's like, God, the elves all. I mean, we're in trouble. I think we're go back to Hanukkah. Give me my 8 day. My what is it 8 days?
Yeah,
8 days. Eight,
gives you
8 days of self
greater
quarantine.
probabilities.
Yeah. But NQ, I think
Big
Tesla.
window.
Yeah, I mean, Apple, I think is kind of set up here where it's kind of sitting on a little bit of a cliff where we've had sellers in the past coming in. Again, very easy level to see with sellers coming. Tesla, on the other hand, Tesla's having a gap today. So Tesla gapping up. It's interesting to see that NQ is down 0.3%, but yet Tesla is already showing a gap higher here. And again, it hasn't fully opened, so it will
And
need
by
to
the way,
adjust.
the
So,
reason you're seeing Tesla gap higher, Elon Musk did come out and I mean, he moves his stock all the time. He's done selling. So apparently he sold
right,
enough to cover his tax bill.
right, yeah,
And
eight. What
so
was it like 8 billion or something like that, or $21 million?
yeah, it was his tax
It's
bill
like some
was it's like the biggest tax bill in the history
ever.
of history.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
in any
yeah,
case, what he's done, and that's been weighing the stock down because people know that he's had to sell a massive chunks of stock for his tax liability. He's done.
yeah,
He's out.
yeah.
He's slamming California taxation laws, which is
He'll
why
just
he
move to
wanted to move
Texas.
it to Texas.
Yeah,
But
he's just going to go to Texas. Hey, put it this way: he either goes to Texas or he goes to China. That's it. Or maybe he moves to like Singapore. But I mean, in
yeah,
reality, I mean, for somebody like that feels that with his opinions, I mean, if we don't provide an environment that is, I mean, again, he's a very smart businessman. He's not stupid. He knows how to play this game very, very well. Remember, just because he's done selling, remember he was supposedly not going to sell any of the Bitcoin they took at the beginning of the year, and then when we saw the quarterlies, we saw that they made a ton of money because
sold it
Bitcoin went
all.
up so much. So we sold it all.
Yeah,
So what he says and what he actually does is two different things. But again, he is very, very pro business. He has his goals: going to the moon, establishing moon colonies, beating Jeff Bezos. And if he's in an environment here that it's going to hinder him from getting to his life goals, don't think that he won't jump and go to another country and move. And then
yeah,
what that does to us, it puts the United States now at a disadvantage when you have somebody that like Elon Musk going somewhere else so he can have a positive environment for growth and meeting his life goals. I mean, it is what it is. Let's go to oil real quick, and then we can get everybody out of here. So API came in at a big down draw. Again, this is showing you that people are moving around. It was expected to be minus 2.6 million, came in at minus 3.6. So again, a larger down draw than expected. That should be a very, very positive sign for oil. But when we look at the oil chart from yesterday, when that data came out, we really didn't have much. And remember, yesterday we were talking about a level where we had sellers. It was right around the 78. We needed to hold. We had to see if Biden was going to nuke this one. And he really didn't say much that affected the market. And then really kind of when he came in with the API data came in here, the price didn't move. Here, I'll get this out of the way real quick. I'll just delete it. The API data came out right in this area and really was kind of unmoved, right? Kind of went up a little bit at the end of the day and then kind of pushed down in the overnight session. The European session right here kind of pushed it back up again, and then we kind of pulled lower. And again, we try to mark these off just to kind of get an idea of what the European market is feeling. And right now, there's your 8:30 candle. I would say that that's a rather muted day for such a large down draw. And again, it is lower volume. Right now, with it stabilizing, there is a few tops in here. Again, there's a top there, a top there. If you look back to the left this way, you can see that, we had some selling coming in there and a big drop. Let's change this to red. Just above that, we had another big area. So there's a number of different areas in here where we've had selling for oil. To me, on a technical basis, it does look like it's easier for this to go to the downside. But again, remember, with really kind of a flat European session, and again, it opened here where we literally are closing, and the price is exactly where it opened. It is looking more like it's a down day for oil today. And again, could that be because of fears of Omicron and shutting down and canceling trips? And Boeing made some comments about they don't see it affecting too much. But I'll tell you right now, I have now 3 kids now with positive cases from school, going into the Christmas holiday. So everybody's going home right now. It's kind of like, I don't know. So is this where oil is going to turn and flip? We called for a drop from this level. And if it does come down, I would say first targets to the downside. And again, $70 is probably where the target is. And that's going to be the psychological level for oil. Is it above 70 or below 70? But overall, 69.50 is probably the downside target today. If you're looking for kind of shorts or something that you can ride. Again, everybody knows that the oil inventory report, the API report is out, so we kind of already know what it looks like. Remember, just because this is their data doesn't mean it's the actual data that's going to be released today. If you remember last week, it was pretty far off as well. It was kind of a huge difference when you're looking at, let me go down to yellow, down, crude oil. Where are we at? Crude oil. You can see that this was quite a big difference. I think it was down minus 0.8 was the API forecast leak and came down at minus 4.6. So we're using oil. I mean, we are definitely blowing through oil reserves at this point. It kind of puts it into context that in 1 week we had a down draw of 4.6 million barrels. And remember, there was 50 million released from the strategic reserve. We went through almost 10% of that in just 1 week. So, the reality is the 50 was to help stabilize the economy, stabilize it. We went through almost 10% of that in 1 week. That just shows how fast and how little 50 million really was. And again, God forbid they ever say that Omicron turns out to not be a big deal, or it's like, hey, listen, we're already seeing a peak. That's the first week of January. We got nothing to worry about, and we're already using down draws now. Oil could take off, and because I'll tell you right now, OPEC is not going to do anything to stop this one. So I would say again, the top may be in today, although the U.S. loves their oil. Everybody's expecting a big number, a big down draw. If that number is not a big down draw and the market is prepared for that big down draw, that's where we see price. Yep. That's where we start to drop down again, because people are trying to look at that and forecast what's going to happen. But remember, if that industry-based report is not correct, there's no recourse. The EIA number that's coming out at 10:30 today has to be correct. So it's the government's version of it. So it may not be correct, but that's the official one. So
and remember,
so the shorts
10:30 a.m. Eastern today.
Yep.
All right. Brian and I will be back tomorrow morning. Remember, we got that PCE number coming out before we go live. Expect to see some volatility tomorrow morning. The last trading day before the Christmas holiday, before the holiday week next week. It looks like Brian and I are joining. I don't know if we're going to do it every day, but this seems to be that there's going to be some folks who want to join. So thank you. And just take a look at the upcoming live stream sessions to see if we don't go on every day, we might miss a day or two in there, but we will. We weren't planning on being around at all next week. Instead, we're going to be around.
Or the easiest thing to do is go there, find the Nadex YouTube, hit subscribe, and then hit the bell notification icon. You'll be notified if we go live.
And you'll be notified
on your desktop.
Yep. So we're going to discuss that, and we'll drop, because right now I don't think we have anything for next week. We are already have him in for the first week of the year. We're ready for that. Plans change. All right. Any questions for Nadex, please email us, customerservice@nadex.com. Any questions for Brian, please email Brian, support@keeptradingsimple.com. Again, a quiet day a bit this morning. Equities looking a little light after the GDP number. Not really moving the markets too much, but we do have that oil inventory report 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Take a look. We might, if we see some variance in supply, it might, and given that there's changing demand with Omicron, see some volatility there in oil this morning. With that, thank you again for joining us. Brian and I will catch you again tomorrow morning. Good luck in the markets, everyone.